There's a certain kind of silence that doesn't feel dramatic. No slammed doors, no final arguments, no long explanations, just a gradual withdrawal. Messages answered less. Invitations declined. Energy pulled back quietly, almost invisibly. And one day, the connection simply isn't there anymore. If you've ever done this, you probably didn't see it as cruelty. It felt more like self-preservation. Like something inside you had already finished the conversation long before your words did. But people don't usually see it that way. They call it cold, immature, avoidant. They say you should communicate more, that you owe closure, that disappearing without a scene is somehow worse than fighting. And over time, you might have wondered if something is wrong with you for choosing silence over confrontation. But there's more going on here than most people realize. Cutting people off silently isn't always about indifference. Often, it's about threshold. Psychologically, every relationship has a tolerance window, the amount of stress, disappointment, or emotional inconsistency your nervous system can handle before it shifts into protection mode. Research in attachment theory shows that when someone repeatedly experiences relational strain without repair, the brain begins to associate that person with threat rather than safety. And once that shift happens, something subtle changes. The amygdala, the part of your brain responsible for detecting danger, becomes more reactive. Even small interactions can start to feel exhausting, not because they are objectively dramatic, but because your system has logged them as unresolved. So instead of escalating, you exit. Not loudly, not vindicatively, just quietly. For some people, confrontation feels clarifying. For others, it feels dysregulating. Studies on conflict styles show that individuals who are highly sensitive to interpersonal tension often experience elevated cortisol levels during direct confrontation. Their bodies interpret prolonged conflict as prolonged stress. If you're wired that way, silence isn't apathy. It's regulation, and this wiring rarely appears out of nowhere. Often, it begins early. Maybe you grew up in an environment where speaking up didn't change anything, or where expressing hurt led to dismissal, escalation, or emotional chaos. Over time, your nervous system may have learned a simple equation. Engaging equals depletion. So you adapted. Instead of arguing your way out, you learned to detach your way out. Instead of demanding change, you observed patterns. And when those patterns repeated enough times, you stopped investing. From the outside, it can look abrupt. But internally, it's usually the final step of a long, quiet process. You notice the small inconsistencies, the subtle disrespect, the emotional unavailability. You give it time. You adjust. You rationalize. You wait for alignment. And when it doesn't come, something inside you closes. Not impulsively, gradually. There's also a deeper layer that doesn't get talked about often. People who cut others off silently tend to process disappointment privately. They don't need witnesses to validate their hurt. They don't always need a dramatic ending to feel complete. Once they've made peace internally, the external explanation can feel unnecessary. That doesn't mean they never cared. Sometimes it means they cared enough to endure more than they showed. There is, however, a quiet trade-off. When you leave without explaining, you protect your peace, but you also remove the possibility of repair. Silence creates clarity for you, but ambiguity for the other person. And depending on the situation, that ambiguity can echo. This doesn't make your choice wrong. It simply makes it human. Different nervous systems solve pain in different ways. Some fight for resolution. Some negotiate. Some distance slowly until the attachment loosens on its own. None of these strategies are morally superior. They are adaptations shaped by experience. And adaptation is not a flaw. If you tend to cut people off silently, it may be because your body learned that prolonged emotional friction is more damaging than absence. That clarity is kinder than repeated disappointment. That disengagement is safer than escalation. There is a certain strength in that. The ability to walk away without spectacle. The ability to let go without needing the last word. But there's also a quiet sensitivity beneath it, a low tolerance for inconsistency, a deep need for emotional steadiness. You are not indifferent. You are selective. And sometimes, when you go silent, it isn't because you feel nothing. It's because you've felt enough. If this feels uncomfortably accurate, there are probably other patterns in you that have been mislabeled too. Other ways your nervous system learned to protect you that look one way from the outside and feel entirely different from within. And once you start seeing them clearly, you begin to understand yourself in a way most people never do.